I do smile a lot and laugh a lot, but I don't know if I'm smiling at you or laughing at you. I mean it well. I do like to laugh a lot. But laughter is good medicine, right? That's what the Bible says. And I just want to say how much I enjoy teaching I just enjoy teaching, but I've really enjoyed teaching our student wives and teaching them about visual aids. And I told them a secret, and I'll tell you a secret, and then it won't be a secret anymore. But when I have to stand up in front of everybody, and I spend a lot of time making a PowerPoint because I love to do that, but I try to match the PowerPoint. And so I showed them my screen here at the end of class, and I said, what color should I wear? I'm wearing blue. But I enjoy doing that, and I enjoy teaching. And my assigned topic this morning is Rebekah, the mother of two nations. And we're all familiar with Rebekah, aren't we? We know the story of Rebekah. We start in Genesis 24. Rebekah's a young woman meeting the servant of Abraham at the well. Apparently back in the day, meeting somebody at the well, that's where you met people. You met a future husband or wife. That seems to be a common theme. But we see her as this young woman, and she's eager to go with the servant, right? She hears why he's there, to find a wife for Abraham's son Isaac, and she's willing and freely, she's ready to go. She doesn't even want to stay and visit with mom and dad for a little longer. I think as a parent, as her mom probably wanted that, right? Have a few more weeks with her daughter before she moves way away. But Rebekah's ready to go right then and there. And so that speaks well of her. And then we move on to Genesis 25. We see Rebekah as the wife. And after some period of time, they had a period of infertility. And then Isaac entreated the Lord, and we know they had twin sons. And I just lost my train of thought. But we know they had twin sons, and here's what God had to say about that. It says, the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. The one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And that was very unusual, wasn't it? Very unusual. But she's going to have 2 very different sons, and as a mother, she's going to be rearing, teaching, training the future of 2 very different nations of people. And as time went by, we see that Jacob and Esau grew to be men of very different personalities. And then dropping down to verse 27 and 28, we learn that Rebekah loved Jacob more than Esau, and Isaac loved Esau more. And that is the problem, isn't it? And we're going to just keep that in mind. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of things, and we're going to circle back to that idea. Okay, but going on to Genesis 27 is where Isaac wanted to bless Esau, the firstborn. That was the custom of the day. Under the patriarchal system, Isaac would have been the head of the house, the head of the family, and he knew he was nearing the end, and so he's going to pass that on and pass on the blessings to the firstborn son. That was the normal thing. However, what do we see in Rebekah? She intervened, didn't she? And we see her, she's stepping into the wrong role there, isn't she? She's interfering with her husband's rule of the family. And also we see that she's deceiving her husband to get what she wants. So perhaps we've seen some positive things about Rebekah, but I think this speaks very badly about the choices she made at that time. But let's move on. And we know there were consequences to what happened. There were immediate consequences. Esau came along, and he was very angry when he found out what happened, right? So angry that he wanted to do what? Kill his brother Jacob. And also, there's long-term consequences because Rebekah, I think, helped devise this plan of let's send Jacob away to find a wife. They didn't like Esau's wife. So she said to Isaac, send him back to my brother Laban and find a wife among our people. And that seemed like a logical thing, but she was trying to get him away from Esau, wasn't she? And I think she told Jacob, you go and in a few days I'll call you back when Esau, when Esau is no longer angry. But we know the rest of the story, don't we? Jacob was gone around 20 years and spent that time with Laban, and he got 2 wives, and there were 2 handmaidens, and there were lots of kids, and he got lots of flocks. But when he comes back, when he comes back, I'm going to have to drink a little water. He comes back, and Esau's not angry, and it shows them reconciling and stuff, but Rebekah's never mentioned again, is she? If memory serves me correctly, and from what I've studied, Rebekah isn't mentioned again, and so I think scholars assume that she had passed away in that time. So that she sent her favorite son away and didn't get to see him again, apparently. So that's kind of sad, isn't it? So we see the long-term consequences of the tricking and the lying, the deception. Anyway, our actions always have consequences, don't they? Let's move on here. I've said that already. Okay. Mothers today, we're not given prophecies about our children, are we? Rebekah was. She was told she was going to have 2 boys, and they would be the father of 2 nations. We don't know. But what we do know is that God gives us instructions on how to raise our children. We know we can teach them what God wants them to do. So I'm not keeping that up with you. We have God's words to know what God wants us to teach them, how we should raise them. So even though we don't know if are they going to be doctors, are they going to be lawyers, are they going to be, whatever, are they going to be preachers or elders or song leaders? We don't know, but we can teach them God's word and have them prepared for whatever life brings them. And so our children may not be the leader of a nation. Most likely, I don't think my children are going to be, I'm sorry, Hannah, you're not going to be the leader of a nation. I hate to disappoint you, but that's probably not going to happen. But we can have our children prepared for whatever God has for them, right? So let's see. Oh, I said that already, didn't I? I'm talking faster than I'm moving the PowerPoint. I apologize. I went over this. I was going over my lesson yesterday and studying, and I was just, I've got notes over here, but I wasn't even looking at them. I was just looking at my PowerPoint, and I went through it. It was all in my mind. But the bad thing is it took me 2 hours. And they did not allot me 2 hours this morning. So let me see if I can keep this PowerPoint going with what I'm trying to say. But anyway, all mothers should be teaching all their children. So our children may not grow up to be the leader of a nation, but teaching all nations can begin at home, right? If you are a mother and you have children in your home, you're in the mission field. You don't have to have a passport or get a bunch of shots or go through all the government red tape to travel. You just get up in the morning and throw on your bathrobe and you're in the mission field. So our children are our first mission. So this morning I wanted to look at 3 areas, and I'm the kind of person, first I got to see the big picture, and then I'll bring it down and bring it down. But the big picture is, let's look at motherhood on a global scale, and then let's see what God expects of mothers, and then we're going to circle back and talk about some of the pitfalls of parenting based on what we can learn from Rebekah. So first of all, the global scale of motherhood. So I wanted to talk a little bit. Look, we know global population is just booming, right? In 1800, there were about 1 billion people in the world, and now there's over 8 billion. So I think that's about a 225-year span. There's just been a huge boom of population. To me, when you look at those numbers, it sounds like, well, there's a lot of moms having a lot of babies to grow the population that fast. But when we look at other things, we see maybe that's not the case. Let's see. The birth rate or fertility rate those 2 terms are slightly different, but people use them interchangeably. It gets a little confusing. The birth rate tells us that it's sharply declining. The fertility rate, specifically fertility rate, is the average number of births that a woman has in her lifetime. And what we know is just globally, that's going down. So women are having less children. And probably, we know that maybe from your own family. I look back at like my grandparents' generations, and 3 of my 4 grandparents came from big families. And so that was the norm back in the day, and now it's not. There's been a lot of talk lately and study of South Korea as an example, because South Korea has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. And so people have done studies to see what's going on and why is their birth rate going down. And actually in 24, last year, South Korea saw an increase in the birth rate, which was good, but they also had more people passing away. So they have this shrinking population. And for a smaller country like South Korea, that can be a problem, especially when you're surrounded by bigger communist countries. That could be a real problem if you have a smaller population. We don't worry so much about that in our country because we're a bigger country, and our population is growing, but our birth rate is going down. And that doesn't quite make sense, does it? But I think because we have so many people coming here from other places that our population's growing, but we still have women are having fewer children, which is the point I'm trying to get at. But anyway, in South Korea, their former president last year called this a national emergency. So it's a big deal to their country. They have a fertility rate of 0.75. So that's the average number of kids. You can't have 3/4 of a kid, but mathematically, I'm not a math person, but mathematically that works out. But usually they have 1 kid. But what is needed for a steady population is 2.1. Oops. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. The BBC did a report recently on the trend. They did a study on South Korea to try to figure out why is their population going down so much. And so the study found they polled a lot of young women. A lot of young women do not want to have kids, and a lot of them don't want to get married. And so here's some of the reasons they gave for that. Their job required long hours. And I would say that people in South Korea are very industrious. They're very hardworking. They work longer hours and a longer work week than what we would be used to. So their jobs are demanding. And the jobs pressure them to study and take classes in their free time to advance in their job. If a woman takes maternity leave, then she might lose her position, she won't move up in her company or whatever, or she may be harassed at work. When you have kids, they get sick a lot, don't they? And a mom at work may have to leave work and go take care of the child, take them to the doctor or whatever. So those are reasons they're giving for not wanting children. And a lot of them gave those same reasons, well, not the one about being sick or taking maternity leave, but similar reasons for not wanting to marry. So that's just a trend in their culture. But I think if you look globally, that's kind of a trend everywhere. And I think that the problem is that fewer women are choosing to have children, and women are having fewer children because they just don't understand the importance of motherhood. A lot of people are not Christians. They're not looking at the biblical perspective, which is what we look at first, isn't it? And see what God says. Okay, let's look at Psalm 127, verses 3 to 5. I'm just going to read, probably verse 3 says, "Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." So having children and having lots of children is a blessing and a good thing. We should value our work in the home. I was thinking, and I understand if you've worked hard to get a job, you want to keep it, you've got bills to pay, we've got bills to pay, right? So you need that income coming in. But when you're a worker in whatever office or wherever they might have a job, there's always probably a dozen more people who want your job. Your job can be replaced, right? But the work we do in the home, that can't be replaced. What a mother does in the home cannot be replaced. There's not a dozen people waiting to parent your children if you fail to, or if you want to go do something else. So the work that we do in the home is very, very important. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. Now let's talk about the responsibility of mothers and look at some Bible verses here. And the first one is Titus 2, verses 3 to 4. It says, aged women teach the younger women, and many other things it says there, but specifically to love their children. I like this verse, not that it says aged women, that makes me feel old, and maybe I've gotten into that category, but there's always somebody younger, right? I've raised my children, and so those of you still raising your children are younger than me, and we need to move into a position of being mentors, right? I know no one likes to get advice they didn't ask for, or somebody being, nosy into their private business. But a lot of times today, when we want advice, we go to YouTube or we ask Siri or something like that. But younger women, I think it would be good to be open to getting advice from people who have, raised their children. And of course, as we get older, things change. There's different ideas about potty training or sleep training or whatever it is. Those things change all the time. But there's good, solid advice that never changes, like the advice that we get from God's Word and doing things God's way. And so it's good for older women to be willing to mentor younger women, and younger women be willing to accept someone giving them some good godly advice. Okay, let's see. There's a few verses here that speak specifically to the fathers that I think would apply to mothers as well. And the first one is Ephesians 6:4 that says we're to bring up children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Let's see. So I always look up words in the dictionary. You know what it means, but do you know the specific meaning? That's what I always think, so I always go to dictionaries. And first of all, the word nurture there comes from a word that indicates tutorage, like teaching, education, or training. And so training children, we're to be training the children. And the next one, admonition, we don't use that as much, but it means calling attention to or a mild rebuke. I thought that was interesting that the dictionary said it's a mild rebuke, because I think a lot of times we think to admonish somebody means to be up in their face and raking them over the coals and that kind of attitude, but that's the wrong attitude, isn't it? Sometimes when you're raising children, you feel like I've told you this 100 times. And it may be, brushing your teeth properly, don't run on the stairs, don't run through the parking lot. Those are the kind of things we say 100 times. And you know what? We're going to say it 100 times more and 100 times more, because that's training. And, sometimes after 100 or so times, I begin to get a little, warm under the collar. I can get a little heated about saying something over and over, and kids not listening. But it's a mild rebuke. Admonish means a mild rebuke, calling attention. If you jump down the stairs, you're going to, break your ankle or something. I remember saying that to my son a lot. He went through a stage where he wanted to jump down the stairs all the time. And I kept saying, don't. But then I realized I needed to bring some no, don't do that. It goes in one ear and out the other, right? But I had to give him some reason. If you break your ankle, you're not going to get to play basketball. Now that's something he understood. And that kind of, they need some reasons sometimes, not just don't. But our rebukes need to be mild when we admonish and nurture them. We understand nurturing, like if you've got a little seedling of a plant. I'm not a plant person, but if you've got a little seedling of a plant, it takes some nourishing, doesn't it? You have to nurture it along. Or maybe friendship. It might be that you've met some friends here this week. It might be you see some friends you haven't seen in a long time. Friendship takes nurturing. It takes effort, doesn't it? And so raising children God's way takes nurturing, and it takes admonishing, training, teaching, saying those things 100 times and 100 times and 100 times. That's part of the job. Here's another word to fathers. A similar verse found in Colossians 3:21 says, "Fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged." This is similar to the previous verse, but here it gives the reason for not provoking them to anger. Because it says, children or anybody can be provoked to the point of discouragement. If parents are harsh and they're critical, they're never encouraging, they never say a positive word, and telling the kids what they're doing right or what they're doing well, children can get so discouraged. And I've seen a lot of young people, once they grow up, once they leave the home, they turn 18 or whatever, they leave the home and they leave the church, right? Probably everybody you can think from your congregation, somebody who's, after they got out of school, high school or whatever, they've left the church. And it's not always because the parents were critical or harsh, but sometimes it is. When parents are very harsh, sometimes the children get the opinion of that's how the church is, that the church is very harsh. The church as a whole has a responsibility to encourage the children. And I think here at Forest Hill, I've seen that, people of all ages encourage our young people. And that makes me really happy to see that. Because they need encouragement and need to know that their family especially and the congregation, that's a happy place. It's a place where they get built up and encouraged. Harshness turns people away. Let's look at the next verse. This is one we're all familiar with, and when I'm talking about parenting, I just pull a whole lot of verses out of Proverbs, the book of wisdom. But Proverbs 22 verse 6 says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it." So first of all, we need to realize that Proverbs is a collection of wise sayings. They're inspired. They're from God. If you want wisdom, don't turn to the wise sayings of the world. I mean, sometimes I hear, on various social media, you hear some clever things, but when it comes from the Bible, it's coming from God. And so we know this is true and correct. So Proverbs gives us a lot of instruction and encouragement for raising children. I know a lot of people who have taken this verse to mean it's a promise or a guarantee. If you do everything right, they're never going to leave the church. Does that say that right there? I don't see those exact words right there. This is a generalization, right? So let's look a little closer. First, the word train. That word means to discipline, to dedicate, to train up. Okay, so we understand that teaching, that train, it's something that takes repetitiveness. It takes years to do that, right? You can't go home and next week train your kids and everything they need to know. It's a process. It's an 18-year, a 20-year, a 30-year process because you're always their mom and you're always helping them and teaching them and encouraging them. Here's another one. This was very interesting to me. The literal meaning of the Hebrew word that is translated as train means to narrow. That's what the original literal meaning is. And so we kind of have the idea of like honing in on something, narrow in, focusing on something. We understand that in like athletic training, right? People who are athletes train specifically for their sport or whatever it is. And I was thinking like, if you were on a rowing team, those narrow boats and they row, they probably, I'm not an athletic person, but they probably work a lot on their shoulders and arms, right? They need strong arms. What about somebody who's a runner? They're working on legs, aren't they? And probably lung capacity if they're like going to run a marathon or something. What if a marathon runner spent all their time working on their arms? When they get ready to run the race, their legs are going to be like noodles, and that's going to be no good for them. So they hone in their training for specifically what they want. So in the arena of parenting, we have the end goal in mind, which is we want our children to go to heaven. We want our children to be pleasing to God, so we need to hone in our training on that. Specify our training on what we want the end goal to be. Okay. And there's that verse again, train up a child in the way he should go. A lot of people, and I said, a lot of people take that as a promise from God. And so I know a lot of people, and even friends of mine, who've said, we did everything right, and my child left the church. What did I do wrong? And they use this verse to just beat themselves up and feel bad. And so when I've talked to some of my friends, and I've tried to tell them this is not a promise or a guarantee, it's generally true. I think let's look just for a second at another verse that, when we're talking about parenting and our children, we get very emotional, don't we? So let's look at a verse that doesn't specifically pertain to parenting, and that's Proverbs 15, verse 1. I'm sure you all know this, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Now, is that generally true? If somebody's up in your face angry and they're chewing you out or whatever, if you answer them back nicely and calmly, does that help settle them down? Generally, it does. Is that a guarantee? Well, no, they have free will, and they may just keep coming at you and yelling at you. No matter how nice and calm and sweet you are, they could just keep yelling at you, right? That's not a guarantee, but this is generally true. So if you take that thinking back to the other verse, then you could see it's generally true that if you teach your children the right things when they're young, in the formative years, you teach them the right thing, and it's going to stick with them through their lives. They may make bad choices, but the right things are still in their head, and so you hope that at some point it clicks. It all clicks together, and they see they need to come back. So that's what that verse means, to train them up, and when they're old, they will not depart from it. Okay, let's move on to another verse is Proverbs 20, verse 11. It says, even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. So this shows us the importance of a good reputation. We want to have a good reputation. We want our children to have a good reputation. Since we want them to have a good reputation, we need to teach them. We need to teach them the right things and see that they're involved in good works. But also, as a mother, if other people can see what our kids are doing, we need to see that even more, right? Not to oh, you're getting in trouble and you did this and whatever, but I mean see what they're good at. What are their talents? What are their abilities? What things do they like? What's their natural tendencies? As my kids were growing up, I'm trying to figure out, what do I need to teach these kids? Because I homeschooled them when they were growing up. I took 25 years to homeschool all three kids. And, when they're young, you're teaching them all the basic facts, the general things that everybody needs to know. But as they get older, you begin to think, okay, what does this child want? What does this child like to do? From a very early age, my oldest daughter liked medical things. And so I was buying, books. We spent more time studying biology and more time studying human anatomy and things that pertain to medical things, because from the time she was, 10 or 12, she wanted to be a nurse. And now she is, and she's here in Memphis, and she works at Le Bonheur, the Children's Hospital, and she enjoys her job. I think she's good. I don't see her at work, but I think she's good at it. Because I'm her mom, I think she's the best nurse there, right? But anyway, from a young age, she was interested in that. And so we brought in more materials to study and help encourage her in that way. When my son was coming along, I thought, I don't know what he's going to do. But I kept doing teaching him all the general things, and he's like, what do you like? What do you want? Do you want to study computers? I'm like, he's not going to sit in an office. This boy's Mr. Energy. He's not going to sit still and be quiet and, a guy working in a cubicle. And I'm like, I just don't want him to be in jail. This kid never obeyed. He never followed the rules. This kid's going to jail. But, and some of you know, but he's now a preacher because we sent him to Memphis School of Preaching and they straightened him out. No, he has a good heart for that. Sometimes kids are just full of energy and into everything, and you think, what is this kid gonna do? But you keep working and you keep teaching them the right things, and it will work out, right? And my youngest daughter is here too, and she has lots of talents. She likes to write, and she's very artistic. All the kids are kind of artistic, but she especially, and she likes to write children's books and illustrate children's books. But now she's busy working at a coffee shop and doesn't have much time to put into that. But we develop those skills. What can this kid do? Who knows the kid better than the mom, right? You're looking at them all the time. So what do they like? What can they do? What are they definitely not going to do? I don't waste my time sending any of my kids to advanced math classes because none of us had a math brain in our family. So we did basic math, but we didn't do a whole lot of deep math because we weren't doing that. That's not the way we're bent. And now my daughter's dating a nice young guy, and he is one of those guys. Nice young math man. He's a math inside. So I'm hoping that guy doesn't see me counting on my fingers because I'm not a math person. But everyone's different. We all have different talents and abilities. So mamas, look at those kids and try to figure out, what can they do? What do they like? Sometimes we just send our kids off to school and think, well, they'll fix them. They'll teach them what they need to know. Well, hopefully they do, but they don't know your kid as well as you do, right? So mamas, look at your kids and see what they're good at and what they can do. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox and move on to the next one. Proverbs 29 verse 15 says, "The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame." Here's the verse that talks about mothers. And it says that mothers can be brought to shame. We don't want to be brought to shame, do we? I don't like to be embarrassed, do you? When I'm embarrassed, I want to run and hide. I'm going to crawl up under the table or roll up under the pew or something. I don't like to be shamed. But this says, this instructs us that the rod and reproof give wisdom. So there's physical correction and there's verbal correction, right? Not physical abuse, not verbal abuse, just correction. Those two types of correction give wisdom. And then a child left. Do you see the words "to himself"? I made them bold and italic there. If you look in your Bible, they're probably italic. That means they were added by an editor, right? To try to better explain what that means. But a child who's left. In other words, not that you left your child at Walmart or somewhere, but that you left off that rod and reproof. A child who's left from those things. The child that doesn't get those things will bring his mother to shame. And maybe you have been somewhere and there's a kid that's just totally out of control, all by himself, and everybody's standing back looking at that kid, looking at each other. And what do people usually say? Where is his mother, right? or her. It might be her, but it's usually him. I'll just say it's usually a him, but not always. But they say, where is the mother? When I was going over this, I was thinking about a time many years ago when I was a young mother. I was with a group of people at like a fast food restaurant, and my kids weren't there for some reason. I don't remember the circumstances, but there were some kids in the group. And so we got our food and we sat down at a table, and I took my cup back, the self-service drink station, get your own drink. And so I'm heading back over there, and one of the little boys in the group had a straw, and he stuck it up in the first little thing where the soda came out, and he took a taste, and then the next one, and the next one, and I was like, ooh. And I look, and there's a man I never seen before come in from the other direction, and he had the same horror look on his face because apparently we were both germaphobes. But he looked at me, and I said, you know what I said? That's not my kid. That's not my kid. And I said to that kid, whatever his name, I was like, so-and-so, go find your mother, she will get you a drink. So like, I wasn't going to own, that's not my kid. That's what we say, right? Hopefully it's not your kid doing that. But anyway, a child left to himself will bring his mother to shame. Is that true of the dad too? Yes, the dad has a responsibility for rod and reproof as well, right? But specifically, it says it's going to bring the mother to shame. So I think mothers just spend so much more time with the children, and we're watching every little thing. I feel like it seems like men don't see every little thing like we see every little thing. And so when you're seeing every little thing, don't just get mad and grumpy about it, but think about how to correct them. Not in anger, it's not raking them over the coals. It's a mild rebuke to bring them in line and let them know, we don't stick our straw up in there, that's gross. All those little things, somebody's got to tell them, right? A little kid doesn't know that it's gross to try to taste every soda to see which one you want. A little kid doesn't know that until somebody tells them. So that's the job of a mother. Okay, let me go on and talk about the pitfalls of parenting. And turning our thoughts back to Rebekah. What can we learn about parenting? The thing that stands out to me so much, it's a huge pattern in this family. Isaac and Rebekah, both of them showed favoritism. And showing favoritism, if you just have one kid, then show them favoritism. But if you have more than one, if you've got the 1.6 whatever, then you can't have a favorite child, can you? Although in our family, we have the 2 girls and we have 1 boy, so I always would give my son a hard time, and I used to call him Honey Bun, my favorite son. But since I only have 1 son, I could have a favorite son, but not a favorite child. But we can't, showing favoritism among children is it's a tragic mistake, isn't it? And I think we see that very much with Isaac and Rebekah, for starters. But what is favoritism? Favoritism is giving one child more love, more attention, just more favors. The idea, like kids like, I'm going to get everything I want, right? Well, no, none of us gets everything we want. So if you're showing a kid they get everything they want, that you're not showing them what the world is really like, right? Okay, let's move on here to the next one. Here's a verse. This doesn't relate specifically to parenting, and it doesn't say anything about favoritism, but I think this principle applies. Proverbs 11:1 says, "A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." A just weight is a weight that's true and fair. It weighs accurately. It gives a fair value. When we're going to the grocery store and you're getting those bananas that you have to weigh or something else, some other produce, you want a fair weight, right? Because you're paying by the pound or whatever, and you want the right thing. We especially know that when we go to the gas station, right? If the thing says you bought 10 gallons, you're paying for 10 gallons, you don't want 10 cups, right? That's not going to get you very far, is it? And that's going to cost a lot more money. And when you go to the gas station, if you look closely at the pump, there's a little sticker on there, isn't it, that says they have done whatever they do to check those things regularly to make sure they're accurately measuring a gallon of gas. And so it's so expensive, you want to make sure you get every drop for a gallon, right? Every single drop. So when a mother is judging her children by unfair standards, I think she's using a false weight. And so if we're showing favoritism to a child, it's out of balance. That's parenting. That's a parenting style that's out of balance. It's unfair. It's unfair to the child who's the favorite because they're getting too much. And it's unfair to the child who's not the favorite children because they're not getting enough. It's an unfair balance. Does that make sense? To me, that connects in my mind. So I just wanted to bring that verse in. Every child needs a balanced amount of love, attention, and favor. along with the training and the teaching from his or her parents. Every child needs has the same requirements, the same needs. And sometimes, it doesn't mean that, like, if I buy my daughter a doll for Christmas, then I've got to get my son a doll for Christmas. And we think, well, that's being fair. But that's not the idea. It's just that one got something of a value and the other one gets something of a similar value, of equal value. Kids know that, don't they? Anytime it's Christmas or holidays or any gift-giving season, like, we're counting how much money did we spend on the kids and how many. It's hard to do sometimes, isn't it? It's like, okay, if one got 3 gifts and the other got 10, they're going to know. They're going to know that, aren't they? And so that's a big deal to little kids, especially. As they get older, they understand if you had one big, nice gift, some big fancy bicycle or something, and the other kid gets 10 little things from the dollar store, they're going to know the difference, aren't they? And then not just gifts, but in everything you do, in your judgments on, yes, you can do this, or you can do that, or allowances, or whatever it is. Kids always know those things immediately, and they know if they're being treated fairly or not. Sometimes they get a little gripey and they think they're not being treated fairly. But if you're treating them fairly and they think it's not, it's time to sit down and have a conversation, isn't it? And explain to them as they get a little bit older. I'm not talking about toddlers, but a little older kids. You can explain, this is, maybe a child is sick or a child has broken their leg and they need a whole lot of attention or something at that time. The other kids need to understand why that is. Your brother has broken his leg because he was jumping down the stairs like I told him not to. He didn't do that, but that really could have happened. But if somebody did break their leg, they would need a lot more attention from mom and dad, right? And so the other kids would have to understand that. It's something that would have to be explained because it needs to be fair and balanced. Okay, let's see. Here's something from Psychology Today. Did a study on favoritism, and these have come out very recently, just earlier this year and at the end of last year. They put out a report, and it said the unfavored children are, excuse me, I'm going to have to get some more water. We're almost out of time, aren't we? Are we out of time? It's okay. It's probably okay. The unfavored children are vulnerable to developing personalities impacted by underlying anger. And so, let me go back there. And I thought, why are they, the unfavored children tend to have anger? First of all, they're angry at the parent who treats them unfavored. And second of all, they're also angry at the other parent because that parent didn't change anything. The parent that liked them, favored them, didn't change the situation. And also they can be angry toward their sibling that's getting all the attention, right? Especially if that sibling, sometimes that favored child exploits it to get everything they want. Give me this, let me go here, let me go there. Stuff like that. Sometimes children know they're favored and they kind of use that. The Psychology Today, they also said that as a child grows up, as an adult, their anger is likely to be easily ignited and inappropriately expressed. So think about that anger is easily ignited. They get angry very easy and express it in the wrong way. So now let's go back to Rebekah and see. There we go. Sorry. Going back to Rebekah with Jacob and Esau. Rebekah loved Jacob, and then she helped Jacob trick the dad. And who was angry? Esau. Was he very angry? Was he inappropriately expressing his anger to the point that he said, I want to kill my brother? Okay, let's see. Well, no. Another thing I thought too was, sometimes when I read accounts in the Bible and I think, why do these people act this way? Why did they do what they did? Why was Jacob willing to trick his father? He's older. He's near the end, and why is he willing to trick his father? Was it because Isaac favored Esau, so he was angry at Isaac for favoring his brother? The Bible doesn't tell us, but that might be a reason. Moving forward a few years to Jacob, did he learn the lessons about favoritism? No. We have a tendency to repeat mistakes, don't we? So if you fast forward, he's got 2 wives, 2 handmaidens, and 12 sons, and 1 favorite. And we can understand why he had a favorite wife. We know the circumstances, and so that's why he had the favorite son. But those 12 sons were all his sons, right? They were equally his sons, regardless of the situation with the mothers and all of that. But they all wanted fair and equal treatment, didn't they? Let's see. So would you say that he had 10 older brothers? Did they express their anger? Did they explode in anger? Did they express it inappropriately? First they wanted to kill him, and then they decided to put him in the pit and sell him. That's inappropriate, isn't it? And why were they so angry? I mean, they're angry because of the favoritism toward Joseph, weren't they? The thing that always bothered me was, we're not talking about little kids being mad about something. These are 10 grown men. 10 grown men took that coat of many colors back to their father. They didn't say Joseph is dead. They just let him believe what he thought. He assumed he was attacked by a wild animal. And they watched their father in grief for many years, didn't they? 10 grown men never cracked and said, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. Let's see if we can go find Joseph. None of them ever said that, did they? They never told their father what really happened. They never told the truth. They never tried to make it right. How is it that 10 grown men would do that to their father? Is it because they were angry at their father? Because he treated them as unfavored? Again, the Bible doesn't tell us that, but that's a reasonable explanation, isn't it? So, the pitfall of parenting, we want to avoid favoritism. Every child needs a balanced amount of love and favor and attention, as well as correction and training. Another one I'm going to mention quickly is comparisons. Comparison is a thief of joy. We women are bad about this sometime, aren't we? We look at what other people have. Oh, your dress is so pretty, and I feel bad about me. Or your purse is so nice, and then I feel bad about my purse. Or it's a house, or it's a car, and we just go on, right? Whatever it is, somebody's got a better than me, right? And then I feel bad. It takes away my joy and what I have when I look and with jealousy toward what other people have. And so when we bring comparisons into our parenting, we can hurt the children that way too. And that's easy to spot when we're comparing. A lot of times, questions like, why don't you? Why don't you make good grades like your brother? Why don't you do your chores like your sister? Sometimes we say things like that, and we're not meaning to be hurtful. We just want to encourage them to, raise the bar, do better, get those chores done, please clean your room, whatever. We want to say whatever it takes to get them to clean their room or whatever it is. And so we think we're helping and we think we're doing something, but sometimes if their childhood is full of those kind of comparisons, what are they going to feel like? They're never good enough. Nobody sees my talents. Nobody sees what I can do. They only see that I didn't do my chores or that my grades weren't that good. Little kids really remember those kind of things. They take note of that kind of thing. Let's see. So comparisons will rob a child of joy and what they can do, cause them to feel bad about their inabilities, and lead to discouragement and depression. So even though it's hard sometimes, we don't mean to cause such things, but we need to think about the impact of our words to other people. Well, to anybody. When we're talking to anybody, we should think about the impact of our words, right? but especially to our children. You know, sometimes we put on our public face and we're all nicey and polite and well-mannered in public, and then we go home, we're like, whew, we'll take off that public mask, and then I'm just me, and I'm going to tell you like it is. But we need to be careful about that, don't we? Children are so impressionable, and it's easy to encourage and build them up, and they can just do all kinds of things, but it's also easy to discourage them, to hurt them, and keep them from being all they can be. And going back to the life of Rebekah, we see that with Jacob and Esau. From the very beginning, there were comparisons, weren't they? One was red and hairy, and one was smooth, and one liked to hunt, and one liked to cook and be in the tents. They are very different people, and that's okay. As a mother, if those were your two sons, that would be perfectly fine, right? You can love and appreciate both and not choose up favorite. It's really bad when the mother has a favorite and the father has a favorite. That's causing a lot of division in the family, isn't it? And we can see in the life of Rebekah that caused a huge problem. So I just want to say a wise mother will notice differences but not make unfavorable comparisons. And a wise mother will encourage good behavior and the unique talents, help them develop the unique things, the unique talents that make them them. Okay, so every mother needs to know the power of encouragement. Every mother needs to know a balanced approach to love all her children, give them all love and attention. A mother has a responsibility to nurture and admonish all her children equally, and a mother has the opportunity to influence a life. There's not many jobs that you could do where you're influencing the future of someone's life, how their life is going to go. Here's a quote, a mother has the opportunity to influence a child's life from their physical health to their emotional well-being, their cognitive abilities, their ability to learn, and their social skills. We're doing all those things. Sometimes we don't think about all the things we're doing, but being a mother is like a major counseling job. Not just counseling with the problems, but helping them direct their lives, and doing so directing them in the way that God wants them to go. And I will close here with a quote from Focus on the Family that had an article called The Power of a Mother's Love. And it says, the profession of motherhood is all about influence. You and I have an incredible opportunity to influence the next generation by what we do as a mother today. And so I just want to thank you all for coming and also for scooting in so I could see you all better. And I ran over a little bit, but hopefully that's okay. And you're dismissed to the next time.